79 or 80. I don't know. You spread that bill out. Wait a second, call.
Hey, Susie, help me focus, will you?
20 bucks a pop.
His next will be broke, you know? I said, Cliff's next will be broke.
If you did, it's no one's fault but your own.
No,
We
it's not.
enjoyed it.
Ham.
Did they run out of ham?
Yes.
Gerald will complain. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We're going to have enough ham for the after-dinner entertainment. That
Pete and I didn't give him one slice apiece.
Well, gracious. I said we're going to have enough ham.
I'm only going to get one piece tonight.
Okay?
That was just ham.
I couldn't help but think.
It won't be long now.
You're not.
I gotta go. Caroline will be on about 10.
No. We'll be open 9 o'clock.
Okay, I still gotta go.
What room is it?
Thanks for coming by.
I couldn't help but think as I was sitting here and watching, Bob asked Susie to display a little more and a little more so he could get something on the video there that might be really super interesting to watch. The old thing we used to say when we were kids, ladies and gentlemen, hobos and tramps, knock-eyed mosquitoes, and bow-legged ants. We come here before you and not behind you. We come here to address you and not to undress you. But I was beginning to wonder there for a few minutes. But indeed, tonight our purpose is to come here and undress in a way our man Calvin McCall. You know, it's great to get to honor somebody like Calvin because it's great to know that somebody has been around this world long enough that they're ready to retire, and they've worked for the same company long enough to have gained so many friends that at least this many of a sampling were able to set aside a night to come out and honor them. And Calvin, we are glad to be able to be here tonight and honor you. And we're so glad that Joyce is with you, that she could come and hear these things that she's probably never heard before. Pick up some little tidbits that she might want to remind you of on occasion, particularly when she wants something new or wants something done. You know, she could bring up a few things that we might share and bring to light tonight.
Uh-oh.
You know, I'm really one of the newer employees around here, and so I thought, well, you know, I need to do a little research on Calvin and find out a little bit about what this man is all about. Well, since I happen to be Tom's secretary, I have access to the files, Calvin. And on occasion, he has given me the key so I can go in and look and find out a thing or two. Well, I found out Calvin started at Eaton, only I guess it was Cutler-Hammer at that point, on June the 3rd, 1974. And at that point, he had come to us with a very prestigious history. This man served in the Navy during those years in the 40s when probably most of us would not have wanted to be serving in the Navy. He had worked for a company called Creative Packaging in Roanoke, Virginia. And as I think about the brick, I wondered if that had something to do with it. Creative Packaging, maybe. Maybe it came to mind. He had been with Singer Corporation. And then we were fortunate enough that he came to work for Cutler-Hammer. Now, I don't know this for sure because Tom's files didn't really go back far enough. But the first review that I found in Calvin's folder told me that his supervisor was Richard Squires. Was he the first Calvin?
Seems to me I remember
Richard Squires. You know, I didn't know Richard too well, you know, because I started there in 1981, and Richard wasn't there 2 much longer after I started. But the thing that keeps coming to mind about Richard Squires is whenever I would say, well, who is this Richard Squires? People would say, oh, that's the dick that wanted to be called Richard. And maybe that said it all. Maybe there were two sides to that. Yeah. But I did find that in the file that Richard was impressed with you, Calvin. And so, you know, I don't know what that says, but maybe that says something. I found that a comment that I thought was very apropos. After Calvin had been with the company 6 years, he had his annual review. And there was a statement in his annual review at that point that said, Calvin finally meets the requirements for a senior manufacturing engineer. So we are so glad that after 6 years, finally, Calvin met those requirements and he got promoted to senior. You know, it was in 1982 that a certain gentleman that's not with us tonight, and maybe that's the only downside of the whole evening, is good old Gino Wicke couldn't be with us tonight because he would love this, I'm sure. But Gino Wicke became Cal's supervisor. And any of us that have ever worked with Gino Wicke knew that that was a challenge. And maybe that's the polite way of putting it, a challenge. But Gene never failed to offer opportunities, did he, Cal? There was always something that he had in mind for you to do, something that he wanted to get done, some priority one report that he wanted turned in or something. But you know, Cal did not let this bother him. He did not let it slow him down at all. He managed to take part in such little pranks on Gene as seeing that Preparation H packages got planted in his desk on a regular basis. He seemed to take part in the splatter guard that was created for Gene as a result of a complaint about urinals. You all remember. He was involved in a number of things. Gene tried to keep him straight. Do you know, Pete and Irene are here, and we think of Pete and Irene as our ace drafters and our CAD operators and all. You know, this guy was their predecessor. Calvin was doing the CAD long before those two guys even thought about it. He spent hours and hours over at Ronigan's learning the CAD. He and Cleve Reese came in and learned a lot of things and came back and showed us a lot of things and spent time and time and time working on a project. And you know, Calvin, I happen to have for you a copy of the project report that I think precipitated all that work. Wasn't that the low-cost indicating light project? And you know, we spent months and we issued reports and we had great little charts and we had all kinds of things, you know, about this low-cost indicating light program. We finally closed this project out on January 7th, 1985. And you know, it was really interesting. The final report says, project closed. Marketing's decision is to cost reduce the existing E22, and the work will be done at Chuk. So just to remind you of all your effort that went down the tube, or maybe I should say went to Chuk, we want you to have a copy of that, Calvin, to save for posterity. 1985 was the year that Calvin inherited the E50, E51 line. Now, Gino Wicke's comments after that first year was that Calvin is a contributing force in the resolution of several design and industrialization problems. Would you agree with that, Dale? Where did Dale go? Robert, would you agree with that? Would you call Calvin a contributing force? Let's hope that it was a force in the right direction always. And it seems to me that I keep hearing E50s and E51s all the time now, too. You know, nothing much has changed, has it, since 1985. But you know, a lot of things have changed. You think about the plant itself, Calvin, since you've been on board. Jim Becker, of course, was the first plant manager. And after Jim came Rudy Stefanik, who was a completely different personality than Jim. Calvin just adapts and goes on. You know, Calvin doesn't make any difference to him. Rudy hung in there till he was ready to retire. And then he stepped aside, and we got this young upstart in there, John Gilbart, you know. But did Calvin let that sway him? No, not at all. Calvin, this stays the same all through. You know, no changes. Do you know this man has even gone through changes in purchasing, Linda? You can appreciate this. I think it was Stuart Reams that was at the helm of purchasing when you first started working at Cutler-Hammer. And then came Cliff Jones. Now, I didn't know Cliff Jones, so I can't really make too many comments on that. But now, Don Elliott was the man who hired me. And I could go on all night about that. I think just the mention of his name is enough for most people, you know. And yet, I can remember thinking, as a greenhorn in the Eaton family, of Calvin spending hours in that man's office. And he had so much patience, you know. He'd listen and he'd nod, and he'd listen and he'd nod. And then he'd walk out of the office and he'd go, and he'd nod and nod, you know. And Calvin helped move tools from one place to another place to another place and back to the first place again. All kinds of changes. All kinds of changes in our division. We've been LCD and ICD and LCD and SOP and I don't know what all else, you know, we keep going. But somehow everything seems to come back around, you know. Well, just like right now, here we are. You're down in the tool room. I think engineering used to be down that area. Schedulers are getting ready to move up front again. The conference room's getting to move out back again, you know, and everything just comes around. So if you hang around long enough, you know, it's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. We've got a lot of friends here tonight that want to share some things with you and share a few comments about things they remember about what's happened. And you know, Calvin is one that it is not easy to come up with any kind of mean stuff on. You know, when I go to people, Calvin, all week I've been saying, what are you going to say? You got something to say about Calvin at the party, you know. And then I'll say, Calvin said, there's nothing mean we can say. Calvin doesn't do anything mean. Calvin's never really blown it. We can't remind him of anything. Someone told me that there were some things involving Calvin when things really got blown, but really the fault was Tom's, you know. Your first award this evening, Calvin, is the Mr. Clean Award, because we had so much trouble digging up dirt on you. We want you to have the Mr. Clean Award, and always know that you hold a very special place in our heart. And the other thing we want to do before we start the evening is we want you to don your official uniform of your status now as a retired senior manufacturing engineer. Calvin, would you please stand for me, please?
Do I need to take my coat off?
Yes, you probably be more comfortable. Now that Calvin is no longer a senior manufacturing engineer, we know that Joyce is still out there earning a living. She now has her own domestic engineer on premise.
And she better bring her check to me.
And I know that she is going to take advantage of that. And with that thought in mind, Calvin, Tom would like to come and talk to you about a few things that are on the schedule for a domestic engineer.
Calvin, I must tell you, I went to your real boss to find out what your goals and objectives would be. You know, they're due now. We've been asking for these goals and objectives probably for the last 6 weeks. You refused to cooperate. So what we did, with the help of our illustrious coordinator, put together a schedule of events for 1990 that we expect that you will live up to. And what Joyce had outlined for you that I think are appropriate, especially the way you're dressed. Project number 1. I understand that the basement needs cleaning. Has been cleaned in a long time. And I understand the events are as follows. That you're to buy some storage boxes. Store everything that I'm sure is accumulated in the basement. But after you get all these storage boxes, you go out and buy a truck. With all this junk to the dump. And what you're also supposed to spend 2 days sorting the junk and the good stuff. And then you're supposed to hide all the fix-it-up projects that you've been putting off for a rainy day, so that you go out and play golf. I understand the garage is about the same shape as the basement. Maybe even a bit worse. What it says, about the same except for the truck. The sorting will take a lot of additional work. And I also understand that the garage is your personal area, and you'll treat it accordingly. Another project you have, clear some land. And one of the very first steps that Karen thinks you ought to have is buying a saw. Then what she said, you ought to buy machines, spread the yard, no more mowing. Then what you can do with a cleared land is you start a driving range. Probably make some additional money, but what really is to be said, at this point in time, you know, go out and hire a crew to complete the projects, have it done by April 1st, golf day. I understand you have a glass door that's not operating. The recommendation is that you call Sears and have them install a new door. And there's the painting. You have 10 days to pick the colors for the paint. You have another 10 days to get the paint on order, get the paint in place. You have 20 days to go out and hire a paint contractor to get the job done so that you go out and play golf. We don't want you to spoil your fun. Then you got to go out and buy a wood splitter. You split all the wood that you have left over to clear the property. But then it says, one day, have a wood splitting party. Calvin, I like to have you have this as Calvin McCall's goals and objectives into retirement.
Thank you, Tom.
Now, you said all these kind things about Calvin and the fact that he's Mr. Clean. If you ask the girls on the floor, he really isn't. I made the rounds in the last few days to find out what Calvin has been doing. And all kinds of things are sort of the same. That's why Susie's here. Oh, she wants to attest to it. But all, you know, I'm learning a lot. They all couldn't be here. They wanted to be here, but they couldn't. For one reason or another, they just couldn't be here. So what we did, we put together a memento that is a representation of all the girls in the plant. I want you to have this memento and keep it on your mantle so you can look at it admiringly and think of your days with Cutler-Hammer and the engineering department. Because I think this is as good a representation. This starts with the girls in the plant, so I want you to have this.
We're all going to meet Tom in the parking lot after this party is over. Meet him to a pulp. You know, I don't think they look like any of us. I told Terry Rogers, they look like a gingerbread man with boobs. Ambrose Davis is a person that has worked with Calvin for a number of years very closely, being over our molding department and being involved in our plastics material selection and all. Ambrose has had a number of occasions to be very much involved with Calvin. And so Ambrose too said he didn't have any dirt. So I told him, well, come up here and lie a while. Come on, Ambrose, come up here and say that.
I ain't got a whole lot to say about Cal. I got a lot I could say, but Joyce